I was up in New Hampshire against my will. The whole thing here has been against my will, and wondering. I said, God, what can I do? I didn't do anything wrong here. I didn't break any laws, and I've been in prison for 8 years. That next day, a guy moves into my room who's a legal genius. He's a real estate expert from Washington, D.C., and he looks over my case. He said, man, you got railroaded. I said, I know. And now they're trying to seize the church property. Actually, they think they already did seize the church property and changed it all over to the government name. Well, the trustee had filed a quiet title action in the county court to say, look, you need to look into this. Something's wrong. That's church property, not government property. And I don't know what all he did there. Anyway, the federal court said, no, we want that in our court, so they moved it up there and dismissed the case. I told him, don't file anything else. So I felt kind of frustrated. Lord, what do I do?
Isaac!
And,
sorry.
Yeah, 8 kids. I guess you got a whole yellow one. I know how that goes. And so he said, I told him what's going on, and he said, well, they kept your legal box in South Carolina.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
After I got moved out of the South Carolina camp, they kept my legal box for a year and a half, 20 months. And that prevented me from filing a complete, what they call a 2255, which is the number of the law that says if your lawyer was ineffective, you can file a 2255 saying, I want this case overturned based on ineffective counsel. So when I finally filed that, they said, well, you're too late. You had to do that in 1 year. I said, oh, wait a minute. They kept my box for a year and a half. What do you mean I got to do it in a year? And I tried to get them to hear it. No, they wouldn't hear it. So my new cellie says, well, Ken, you can file a Bivens claim. I said, well, what on earth is that? He said, well, some guy named Bivens won a lawsuit similar to this years ago that said if the government hindered you from doing what you're supposed to do, then that time doesn't count. They told the time or something like that. So in the Bivens suit, we asked for damages, which, by the way, that suit is still going on. We asked for damages for what they did and for the court to rule that my 2255 must be heard on the merits, not just time barred. And then he said, now that you filed the 2255, you can file a lis pendens. I said, what is that? He said, that's just a notice that says litigation is pending on this case. And so it advises anybody who might want to buy the property, because the government wanted to sell it. It advises anybody who wants to buy the property that there's still litigation pending and they might want to beware, kind of let the buyer beware kind of thing. It's not technically a lien, it's just a notice that litigation is pending. I said, okay. So they're now claiming that because I mailed through the mail a litigation, a lien on the property, that I tried to defraud the government and that I disobeyed a court order, none of which is true, okay? But they're just so desperate because the same day, or within the same week, I think, I'll have to look at the dates, but I think it was the same day, I also filed a complaint of misconduct against the judge for all the things she did in the case that I thought were wrong and need to be looked at by whoever her boss is, saying, look, you need to, this case was wrong in a lot of ways. You know, you can't change the trial transcript. You can't change the jury instruction. You can't withhold evidence of my innocence and know about it and claim you had a fair trial. So I've done everything that I know of. Everything that I know of has been completely lawful. Like 1 Timothy 1:8 says, you know, the law is good if you use it lawfully. So all I did was, just like the Apostle Paul, when he was, you know, being beaten or about to be beaten, he said, wait a minute, I'm a Roman citizen. Whoa, and they stopped. Or like in Acts 16, after he was beaten, he said, wait a minute, I want a public apology. And they were just going to let him go after the jailer got saved. He said, no, you come down here and let us out. We want the public to know you were wrong, not us. So what I'm trying to do, basically they have filed they've called me back in court now and try me. It's a whole new trial, new charge. The charge is mail fraud, which carries a 20-year sentence if they find me guilty. And let's see, I've got it here in my hand. The charge, that's the big one. Mail fraud and also indicting, they're saying, conspiracy to commit mail fraud. They're saying Paul Hansen, the trustee, and I conspired together to do this. Well, I've never met Paul Hansen. They've got him locked up someplace now.
Really? So he's actually been arrested now?
That's what I heard a couple of weeks ago. They came in at gunpoint, SWAT team style in Nebraska, and arrested him, and he's who knows where now. Here's the charge. Well, they always throw 6 or 8 charges at you, too, hoping that at least one of them sticks, because the jury quite often looks at a trial and says, well, he's got 8 charges. Let's find him innocent of 1 or 7 of them and guilty on 1, just, to give the government a little piece of meat. But that 1 will carry a 20-year sentence, too. Okay, Kent Hovind and Paul Hansen did willfully, knowingly, and with intent to defraud, devise a scheme to defraud the United States and for obtaining money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises related to a material fact for the purpose of executing and in order to effect the scheme and artifice to obtain money, did cause to be sent, delivered, and moved by the United States Postal Service or by any private and commercial interstate carrier a claim of lien affidavit of obligation with attachments. And they said this is in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1341. Well, if you look up 1341, it says a 20-year sentence for violating that one. The next count says between May 22nd of 2013 and June 3rd of 2013, in the Northern District of Florida and elsewhere, the defendant, Paul Hansen, so they charged me with 4 of them and him with 6 of them. It is just absolutely so ludicrous. I think the whole thing is posted on 2peter3.com, the whole 12-page indictment. But they have put it off now from September 8th to October to November, and now December 1st is current court date. It looks like that may be postponed because once Paul Hansen gets to Florida, they have to wait 30 days, so it may be now January before we go to trial. So I'll be sitting here in county jail for 2 more months.
And your release date was supposed to be what? July of 2015?
Well, as under the current law, what's called the Second Chance Act, I could have been released last February, 9 months ago, to halfway house, or I'm scheduled to be released this February to home confinement. I'll have to stay home for 6 months, which would be wonderful. All my grandkids live right next door, so I am real ready for that. Home confinement for 6 months. I don't know what all that means and what that requires, but I'll be glad to stay home for 6 months. So the real issue here is it looks like, and everybody that has looked at this says, this is retribution because I filed a tort claim against them, which spells out all their sins and evils. I filed a complaint of misconduct against the judge and against the U.S. attorney, all of which I'm perfectly legitimate, legal, proper for me to do. That's how you're supposed to that's how you're supposed to do things. I haven't done anything illegal, including the Liz pendants. If there is litigation pending, you have a right to file Liz pendants to notify people, hey, if you want to buy this property, be aware there is litigation pending. I would want to know if I was going to buy a piece of property. Here's the definition of Liz pendens. It's Latin from Wikipedia. I would assume it's the same as what the court says. Litigation is Liz pendens is recorded against a piece of property to alert a potential purchaser or lender that the property's title is in question, which makes the property less attractive. It says a recording office will record a Liz pendens upon request of anyone who claims to be entitled to do so because he has filed a lawsuit. If someone else with an interest in the property believes the Liz pendens is not proper, he can then file suit to have it expunged, which is, I guess, what the government did. I don't know if they filed suit or they just simply did it, but they took the Liz pendens off and sold the property. So there is absolutely no damage done at all, and this is pure retribution. Just we're going to get Hovind. It's a pound of.
This call is from the Center.
So let me just see if I get this straight then. You're basically saying that they're going to charge you with mail fraud because you filed this Liz pendants about the litigation and they expunged it. And no harm was done, but yet they just want to pin up to 20 years on you just for filing that document?
That is correct. You got it. Now, here's some things people can do, some practical steps people can take to stop this. A, pray, Acts 12:5 style, that God steps in. I'd like to see something miraculous. It's been a while. Earthquake, hurricane, I don't know. But I'd like God to do something just like, wow, I'm here, folks, and I'm watching this, because this is just plain stupid what they're doing, and evil, in my humble, totally unbiased and correct opinion. So I'd like to see God step in, and people need to pray. Secondly, this whole thing is based on those stupid structuring laws that Congress passed years ago to try to catch drug dealers. They said drug dealers are dealing in cash, and so if any cash transactions are made over $10,000, the bank has to fill out a form. Okay, let the bank fill out a form for every dollar. I don't care what form the bank fills out. So my wife and I, over the many years of the ministry there, took cash out of the bank, which is what the original case was about back in 2006. And they convicted us of structuring transactions, which absolutely did not. The structuring laws say over $10,000 in one day taken out in smaller amounts. You go in the morning, take out $8,000. You go in the afternoon, take out $8,000. That is now structuring transactions to avoid the reporting requirement, according to the law. Well, we took out less than $10,000 every 12 days, not 2 in one day. So the judge changed the jury instructions, which really changed the law to make sure we're found guilty. So I think people need to be bombarding Congress saying, look, would you change this stupid law? It's nobody's business how much money you take out of the bank. If they do have to keep this structuring law in for some reason, it should be very clear this is only for drug money. Innocent people transacting their own business, there's no reason this should be a law that affects them at all. So if Congress passed a law tomorrow that said, we are modifying the structuring laws to say this only applies to money that can be proven to be involved in drug transactions. And anybody in prison who is currently in prison for breaking this law in the past is hereby released. It has to be retroactive. So if Congress would simply pass a modification to the structuring laws, I would go home, and this whole case would disappear.
Now, does it still look like you're going to be able to go home in February, though? I mean, is that still going to happen? Because like you said, it would be great to be on house arrest in February compared to where you are right now.
Well, that will happen if I win at trial or this case is dismissed. But if I don't win at trial or this case is not dismissed and I lose at trial, then I have to go through the appeals process, which will take years. No, then I go back. Next, I would have to go to a higher security prison. I've been at camps for 8 years now. If I get a 20-year sentence, I'd have to go to a penitentiary.
Wow. So basically, if this hadn't have happened, you would be going home in February, and this just happened to happen like right before you're about to get released to your house?
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Let me call you back in 1 minute because I only get 15-minute calls. You got another 15?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right. I'll call you right back, brother. Hang up.
All right. Talk to you in a little bit. Thanks. Wow. So this is crazy. He's just about to get out. He's been in prison for what, about 8 years or something, and he was supposed to be released to house arrest in February, where at least he could see his family, be at home. He just can't go anywhere. And then he was going to be fully released in July, but now they just happened to, at the 11th hour, come up with these new charges, and he has to sit there and, fight this thing from prison, which is obviously more difficult to do than if he were... here he is again. Let's get him on the phone.
This is a Global Tel Link prepaid call from
Ken Hovind.
an inmate at the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office. This call will be recorded and monitored. Your advance pay account balance is $12.22. For customer assistance, billing inquiries, or to block future calls, dial 1-877-650-4249. To hear the cost of this call, press 8 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. This call is subject to monitoring and recording. Do not use three-way or call waiting features during this call. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
All right. Brother, yeah, I think the real purpose of this case, this new charge, is to cover up their crimes and their errors and their mistakes, because if Congress does a complete investigation into what happened in the Hovind case, they would most of them would go to jail. They withheld evidence of my innocence. They did a lot of things wrong, and all I want is the truth to be told. I've got nothing to hide in this case. They have lots to hide. So their solution is, hey, let's bury Hovind in prison again.
Just pretty much lock you up and throw away the key, huh?
Exactly what the goal would be. Now, in the initial paperwork the judge put in when she granted the motion for the government, I forget what it was back in, I don't know, June or something. She said the judge has the right to give up to 6 months in prison for contempt of court if without a trial. But she said, I'm ordering a trial on this one, which is a clear indication she wants more than 6 months. She could have just given me 6. She claims it was contempt of court because I was told not to file anything, which is not true. Paul Hansen was told not to file anything, and he didn't. But she's the one who ruled this is his property, this is Kent's property, not ministry property. Okay, well, I didn't get told not to file anything.
Well, now this contempt of court charge, I just remember when I was a kid growing up watching TV, it would be like $50 fine for contempt of court. It actually carries a 6-month jail sentence for contempt of court?
It does now.
Wow.
Here's the problem. One of the many problems here is people have discovered that prison is a giant business. It's a money...
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
And congressmen, they own stock in the prison system, and in prison industries, and in prison construction companies, and in companies that supply the clothes and the food and, blah, blah, blah. So it's a giant money-making racket. I think it's even on the New York Stock Exchange, prison industries. You can invest in it. So a simple solution is to say it's against the law for anyone involved in law enforcement or involved in creating the laws, legislators, etc., it's against the law for them to own stock or profit from the prison system in any way. That ought to be a crime. Because as it is, if a judge owns stock in the prison system or profits somehow from the prison labor, like sometimes jails will let prisoners go out to work on private people's property, which I think is the case in my case here, where there are prisoners going to, trim the hedges and mow the grass and, I don't want to say too much, but just do some investigating, and you'll find that judges and U.S. attorneys and congressmen are making money off of this. So the longer they lock you up, the better they feel about themselves taking some criminal off the street, and the more money they make on the side. It's slave labor. See, people don't realize Hitler not only killed 6 million Jews, he robbed them of everything they had. It was their finances, their wealth, that financed his army for a long time. He stole their property, stole their houses, stole their gold, stole their clothes, took the gold out of their teeth. I mean, it's more than just killing the Jews. It's the theft that financed his evil doing. And so it's more than just sending people to prison, which is bad enough. It's the damage they did financially. In the government's mind, they not only sent Kent Hovind to prison, they got $500,000 that I now owe them, $3.5 million they say I owe them, plus about $1.5 million worth of property they think is now all theirs. So it's First Timothy 6:10 all over again. The love of money is the root of all evil. Not all kinds of evil like the perversions say. It's all evil. And my case is the government is in love with money, and they have come after me and put me in prison for 8 years and a week so far, want to put me in prison for much longer, and want to justify their theft of all this ministry property. It is perfectly legal for me to file a lis pendens on property since litigation is still pending, and since the judge said that is Kent's property, this could happen to any. This could happen to any pastor of any ministry in USA. If my case isn't fought and won, I think it's a major setback for Christians in general in this country, and certainly for ministries in particular. So I feel like
Dr. Hovind, hang on 1 second.
Yep.
So, Dr. Hovind, what can people do to help? Obviously, pray, but is there anything else that people can do to help?
Well, yes, they can be contacting Congress about doing a complete investigation. See, judges are appointed for life during good behavior, is what the Constitution says very clearly. So Congress has a right to impeach judges if they're not acting in good behavior. And so I think there certainly needs to be an investigation. It's not my job to judge the judge, but it is Congress's job to judge the judge. I filed a complaint with the 11th Circuit, which would be her boss, and they just simply dismissed it, which they always do. Why would they want to get one of their own in trouble when they themselves are doing the same type of thing over and over, you know? It's the wolf watching the hen house. So, but Congress is not under any such obligation. They could do an honest investigation. People should be contacting, especially this new conservative Congress, saying, look, investigate this case from start to finish, and if necessary, impeach the judge, or overturn this case and modify the stupid laws that put him in there. It's Congress's fault. They passed these laws. And it might, like the Dred Scott case back before the Civil War. Sometimes one person, like a runaway slave, Dred Scott, or whatever the situation was there, there's a whole case now named after him because he brought it to a head. Well, I don't need any case named after me, and I sure wasn't looking for this, but there ought to be a Kent Hovind case or something that says, look, what happened here shouldn't happen. Change the laws. Fix this. So there needs to be a full investigation. Congress needs to be inundated with letters. Certainly to change the structuring to include only drugs, not the average person taking their own money out of their own bank to pay their own bills. All Gideon had in the book of Judges, chapter 7, was light and noise. Blow the trumpet, shine the light. John 3:19 says, men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. Well, the more light that gets shown on this case, the better. It's just going to expose the evil. As I've said many times, I have nothing to hide. Please, investigate everything. They're going to tell me on the witness stand, we swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I would love to tell the whole truth, but they won't let me. I promise you. I can predict it in advance. They will stop me if I try to tell the whole truth. They'll say, that's not relevant to this case. It is all relevant to this case. So the only way now is for the media. Right now they're blasting me all over the news here in the panhandle of Florida because that's one way that they can taint the jury pool. If all of the jurors have seen my mugshot on TV and heard the negative news about me, then when they select a jury, I don't go in there with the jury believing I'm 100% innocent. I go in there with the jury undecided, which is totally wrong. The jury should believe you are totally innocent until proven guilty. And that sounds good, like platitude, and it used to be that way. But with what's going on here, you're questionable till proven guilty.
Now, are you going to have a lawyer in this trial, or are you just going to be stuck with like a public defender or something like that?
Well, we have a public defender, and that's all we can afford. They're free. If somebody wants to pay for a lawyer, tell them please do. I don't know who I would get or what it would cost, and if it could be done on this short notice, but it looks like the date might have to be moved to January. But the current date is 3 weeks from yesterday.
Well, we know one lawyer that it's not going to be is David Gibbs from the Christian Law Association.
I was so shocked that he testified against me at trial. I said, "What, David? What are you doing?" Oh, gee. Also, in Philippians chapter 1, Paul said, his bonds had caused the gospel to be spread further. I hope, win or lose, that people will look at this and say, wow, I better get busy and serve God and win souls and spread, DVDs. We've always let people copy my DVDs and give them away. That's still our policy. Please do. So for the gospel's sake, I need to defend my reputation and my name, because people right now think, oh, Kent Hovind's a criminal, therefore don't listen to any of his stuff on creation. Now, if people want to do something with legal defense, they can contact Ernie Land, Land. His email is docfog, like a document, DOCFOG, docfog@docfog.com. They can say, Ernie, can we help? I know a good lawyer. We think we can do it on short notice, and or maybe some lawyer would want to do it for free just to be famous. That I can promise him. I'll make his name well known if he wants to come defend me. My public defender is doing a good job, but they seldom win. And they have to go back in front of this judge over and over, and so they're, I think, a little reluctant to really come in swinging. Whereas a lawyer with no ulterior motive would be more likely to really come after him. So I think pressure on Congress would help. I think pressure on the Justice Department. Say, look, would you call off the dogs in Pensacola? You guys this is a frivolous case. What are they going to gain from this? If they win and lock me up for 20 years, what would they gain? It's going to cost the taxpayers a fortune. The prosecution is already costing a fortune, and they don't gain a thing. They already sold the property. They sold the property. Nothing is to be gained. Guys like Paul Rand and the Tea Party, they ought to be getting phone calls by the hundreds or by the thousands saying, look,
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
I think the Commerce Department ought to be getting involved, saying, why are you wasting our money on all this? See, all through the Bible, you see hundreds of examples where people, politicians and leaders, they did or did not do something that they wanted to because they feared the people. Well, if enough people call and they say, whoa, we better not do that. Herod feared the people and did not do certain things. But people is ultimately where it comes down to. And Christians are notoriously famous for not getting involved in political things like they should. The founding fathers of this country back in 1776, boy, they got involved, and the British were scared stiff of the 5th Regiment, the Black Suit Regiment, the pastors, because they'd fire their people up from the pulpit saying, look, do something, get out there, this is wrong. And all they did in the Declaration was publicly list all King George's sins. And man, did King George get mad. He sent a whole army over here to wipe them out. All I have done is publicly list on 2peter3.com in my complaints, here's what they did wrong. They withheld evidence of my innocence. They changed the jury instructions. They seized church property for a personal tax bill. I have publicly listed what I think is done wrong in their case, and they hate me for it. Well, please help. I don't know what else I can do besides shine the light and make the noise.
So basically, you are going to trial in January for this new frivolous charge, but you're also scheduled to be released to house arrest in February. So is pretty much the only way you're going to make it out of prison in February if you win this case?
Correct. That is correct. If I do not win, I will not go home.
And what are the chances that the trial is actually going to be finished in January? Because with my experience with going to court, it seems like things drag on and continuances, and I mean, hopefully it'll be actually a speedy trial like the Sixth Amendment guarantees you.
Well, this has already dragged on for many months. I'm in county jail in pretty miserable conditions, and have been here, since I was given a furlough, a bus ticket, and $50 to go from Berlin, New Hampshire, down to Maxwell Air Force Base, which is in Montgomery, Alabama.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Showed up in Montgomery. I was there for 4 or 5 days, and they hauled me out to county jail. Never told me why. That was in the beginning of May, and I've been in county jail ever since. They've moved me 5 to 4 times, but I still don't know why they kept me and took me out of Maxwell. But this is probably all part of it. They've had my property. They could plant stuff in there if they want. You want me to call back one more time, brother?
Yeah, sure. It said I have $12. I put $25 on there because I thought it was going to last longer than what it did. I didn't know that it was like 50 cents a minute.
Yeah, they take out $7 every time you do a transaction. I'll call right back.
Yeah, call me back. Yep, thanks. All right, so we're waiting for Dr. Hovind to call us back, but I just can't believe it because I've been sitting there counting down until he was going to get out, and then all of a sudden now he's facing this in January. Hopefully the trial actually goes quickly. He's declared not guilty, or the thing gets thrown out. But talk about just being right down to the wire when he was supposed to be going on house arrest in February. Because being on house arrest wouldn't be that bad. He could see his family, his grandkids, and everything else. All right, here he is again.
This is a Global Tel Link prepaid call from
Ken Hovind.
an inmate at the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office. This call will be recorded and monitored. Your advance pay account balance is $8.39. For customer assistance, billing inquiries, or to block future calls, dial 1-877-650-4249. To hear the cost of this call, press 8 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up. This call is subject to monitoring and recording. Do not use three-way or call waiting features during this call. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
All right, yes, brother. On the phone, no matter how much you put on, they're going to take off $7 or $6.95 for a transaction fee. If you put $100 on or put $10 on, they deduct $7 right away, and then it's about $4 per call after that. And one thing that would really help is if other people like yourself who have a voice that can be heard, because mine's a little limited right now. I'm down in the bottom of the well and need even to pull me out. But if other people want me to call in and do similar talks like this, I'd be thrilled. So tell them how to do it with the phone, or put something up on your website and say, look, Kent will be glad to call you, but it's going to cost you $4 a call plus a $7 fee.
Well, it's not too bad because it just told me that I have $8 left on my account. So we're three calls in, and I've only spent $17 so far. So it goes a long way.
Yeah. The first $7 was a transaction fee, which if you put $100 on it, still would have taken out $7. But anyway, yes, this would really help. It helps me, to be able to tell the truth. If you look at Paul in that book of Acts, several times he was called up and he shared his testimony. Hey, here's what happened. I was on the road to Damascus. I got knocked down, and I got saved, and he defended himself. Hey, I've done nothing wrong. Now, even though Paul defended himself and had done nothing wrong, he was hauled all over the Roman Empire for several years. And several times they left him in prison for 2 years, just for no reason, So I feel I'm going to have a good time talking to Paul when I get to heaven. I'm sure no Apostle Paul, but I can understand some of what he went through. Man, this is... But I think the other thing that's happened, it's been really, really good in a million ways. I've written 30-some books from prison. I wrote my book on end times that you and I discussed that one time, on what on earth is about to happen. That's up on 2peter3.com and on Amazon. I would not have gotten my theology...
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
Had I not come to prison, I probably would not have gotten my theology straight on post-trib, pre-wrath rapture. So that was a blessing. I don't think the Lord needs to keep me here any longer. I've got it, Lord. Got it. Yes, sir. Let's go home now. I changed. So I think that's been good. And I think thousands of people have been motivated to spread the videos more and to become more active in ministry because of my bonds. So maybe it's got a Philippians chapter 1 effect of, helping others get motivated. But media right now is what, especially before trial, is one of the biggest things that we need, and especially in the panhandle. Letters to the editor, articles to newspapers, news media, because that's what the government's doing. They're feeding them all kinds of stuff to prepare them to find this guy, guilty till proven guilty. Exact opposite of what our Constitution's founded on.
Well, speaking of the post-trib rapture stuff, the film After the Tribulation that you were able to participate in has been viewed on YouTube over 2.5 million times, because we've encouraged a lot of other channels to upload it, and one version of it has 1.7 million, but if you add up all the different uploads of After the Tribulation, it has like 2.5 million views. And so that was another thing that, God used you to do while you've been in prison.
Well, amen. I'll help any way I can. Maybe you can do one on our justice system. I think it'd be good if all the jurors, Christians in general, are pretty ignorant of how the law works, but if they're ever called up for jury duty, most jurors do not understand, and they need to understand, that they have a right to completely ignore that judge's instructions. You can ignore everything she says and vote your conscience.
Yeah, jury nullification. Jury nullification. And you know what? I remember when I was in court, I couldn't believe how the judge was giving the instructions to the jurors saying, you must interpret the law exactly as I give it to you. And I thought that they must have to justify their not guilty verdict, but in reality, they can just say not guilty because they feel like it. And so people need to be educated about jury nullification. But I think that would be a great documentary about the justice system, and I think that the title for the film is The Prison Industry.
Excellent. Well, please count me in. I'll help any way I can. I've got a whole list of things that I think ought to be done. That Congress should change the laws. Nobody involved in putting people in jail should profit from it a second time by putting them in longer so they can make money off of it. This is just pure evil. They ought to go to prison for that. I can give you a whole list of ideas. Plus, in the federal system, you're supposed to be housed within 500 miles of your family. That's one of their policies, and I am so sick of the word policy, the way the feds misuse that. Okay, well, I was housed way outside that 500-mile circle for years. So a real simple solution is to make Congress pass a law that says federal inmates have to be housed within, I change it to 300 air miles. Must be housed within 300 air miles of their family, unless they consent to being housed further away.
So where are you right now, actually? Because I know you were really far from your family for a while, but aren't you closer now?
Yeah, I'm 30 miles from home now. This is great. Get to see the kids and the grandkids, and it's wonderful. But what they could do with Congress, they could pass a law that says every day you're housed outside that circle, or every day you're in transit being hauled around, or every day you're in county jail, counts as 4 days off your sentence. That would motivate the feds to get on the ball. The only language they speak is money. They don't speak any other language. So you have to hit them in the pocketbook to get anything done, and it'd be very simple. If you're in county jail, that counts quadruple time. If you're being transported around, it took them to get me from Pensacola to South Carolina, took 2 months. It doesn't take 2 months to drive from Pensacola to South Carolina.
Wow.
They put you in they got a transfer center in Tallahassee. They've got a transfer center in Marianna, Florida. They got a transfer center, a huge one in Atlanta, Georgia. They got a giant one in Oklahoma. They got one in Victorville, California. They got them all over the place. And so what they do is they keep track. Okay, we have X number of beds at these transfer centers. We have to keep them full to keep our people employed. So let's keep transferring people around for whatever reason. Let's move them here, move them there, and they get actually more money out of the federal government for transporting people. And they got U.S. Marshals whose full-time job is driving a bus and hauling people around the country. It's a giant transportation system to haul people around. Okay, they're making money off of it. Make it where it costs them money. You want to transport people? Great. They get 4 days off their prison time. Oh, but then we're going to lose our prisoners. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, good. They can actually go home to their families where they belong. I'm sure you've read the book The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, but whenever you talk about this, that's what it reminds me of. But can you just tell me, what have you been up to lately? Just what's your life like these days? Just your everyday life. I mean, what are you doing in prison right now?
Well, I'm in the Santa Rosa County Jail. There are 48 men in this. They call it a pod. There's a large triangle-shaped open area with one TV blasting all day long, full blast, stupid shows like You Are Not the Mother kind of stuff, And then we have individual cells with the rolling gates that have the jail bars just like you see on TV. So at night at 11 o'clock, we go in and they roll the gate shut and lock us in, 2 of us in each cell, which is about 7 feet by 12 feet. And you have bunk beds in there and a desk. And you get out at 5:30 in the morning, and you're free to wander around in the open room or go back to the doors are just open. In my cellmate is a 26-year-old young man who goes home any day. His mom has surgery tomorrow night. They 3 o'clock. She has to go in the morning for heart surgery, triple bypass, so pray for her. But he has been such a blessing. We get along great. He's a royal blessing. But we have Bible study in my room 4 times a day. After every meal, about anywhere from 6 to 12 guys come in, sit on the floor, cram on the bunk beds, sit on the desk and on the chair, the 2 little stools, and we have Bible study. It is incredible. We've gone through the entire Old Testament, and we're now halfway through Matthew, and the guys are growing like crazy. It's like a college course. In 2 months, you get what you'd get in a whole 2 years of college. So that's really fabulous. This has been a royal blessing. Since I've been in prison, the whole 8 years, I've written 37.
This call is from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office.
I've read over 1,500 books. I have answered over 15,000 letters. I have led over 500, maybe close to 700 people to the Lord now, and try to disciple them. I think I've made over 10,000 of those little bookmarkers for people that I send out. That's been a blessing. So I can see why so much of the Bible is written from prison or captivity, or by people who have experienced one of those two, because it gives you such a different perspective on life. I will forever be an advocate of shutting this entire thing down. In God's law, you either get a fine, a beating, or an execution. And the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul, Psalm 19. If we would follow God's law, it would be so much better. If someone commits a crime, give them an option. Do you want 5 years in prison or 20 lashes?
But you know what? Every single person would choose the beating if that were the choice. And yet people say that the beating is inhumane, yet locking someone in a cage is what's actually inhumane.
Well, if someone rapes your daughter, and he's put in prison for 20 years, now she has to work at a job and pay taxes to feed that guy for the next 20 years. She's being raped again. And she has to worry about him getting out someday. What would be much better, if somebody rapes your daughter, he needs to be executed publicly, and she needs to watch, and then she can go spit on his grave every day for a few days or weeks or months until she heals up psychologically, and the rapist's wife and family can go on with their life, and nobody has to pay for their food for the next 20 years.
It's so refreshing. It's so refreshing to hear you say that, because these days, if you try to point people to Old Testament scriptures to get a guideline on what the justice system should look like, they think that you're crazy. But it's like you said, the law of the Lord is perfect. There's no prison in the Bible. It's like you said, either a fine, a beating, or death. And yet if you try to point out, hey, homosexuals should be executed, people just kind of freak out when you show them things like that. But they have no problem putting somebody in a cage because they possessed a plant.
Right, and put them in for 40 years. And now who's paying their grocery bill? And what's their wife supposed to do? A guy gets a life sentence or a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year sentence. What's the wife and kids supposed to do now? Wait for him? I can tell you right now, 85% don't. They get divorced.
I know they're basically just destroying someone's life when they put them in prison, because 85% of the time they're going to lose their wife, 100% of the time they're going to lose their job, and then they're going to have to carry around that felony on their record and everything. It's just it's a horrible system. I wish people would figure that out.
Well, I think there's a bigger picture. Once you're a felon, you can't have firearms. And so it's another way to disarm the population, just like Hitler took away the guns and then instituted his one-world government, This has been the universal way they always do it. So if there are people in prison that have been found with one empty bullet casing on their floorboard, one empty shell, but because they were a felon, they now have to go to prison for 5 years.
Wow, that's ridiculous.
Really, the solution, it's Congress is the solution for all of these. And that is people calling, saying, look, change these stupid laws.
Well, and the sad thing is a lot of people that are conservative Christians will support, Republican candidates who say, hey, we're tough on crime. But what they don't realize is that when these politicians say that they're tough on crime, they're talking about locking people up like you for 9 years, or, putting people in prison for 20 years because of a drug offense. What percentage of people, because you've been in prison, you've been around people in prison, What kind of people are in prison with you? What percentage of them are actually violent criminals that you think belong there?
I would say in my 8 years, of the thousands and thousands I have been locked up with 24/7 and get to know very well,
You have 60 seconds remaining.
most of them I would hire to work for me in a heartbeat, and I don't know of maybe 5 that are violent that probably should have been executed. The rest should have gotten a fine. I've asked them, would you rather have if you had gotten a beating, would it be do better? Yeah, they say, yeah, I'd get the beating. I wouldn't do it again. It's a better deterrent. It's a whole lot cheaper. All right, we're out of time, brother. When can I call you back? I got dinner on the table here, so if you can call it dinner. When's a good time?
Yeah, just you want. Well, you can call me back anytime. You mean later today?
Okay, sounds good. I'll see what I can do. Thank you.
All right.
You're a blessing.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
All right, well, that was it, folks. Dr. Ken Hovind reporting from prison. Be praying for him because this is a terrible situation. I know a lot of people have been counting down for his release, and, I keep telling people, are always asking me, hey, when is Ken Hovind getting out of prison? And I always tell them, July 2015, July 2015. And then I had heard this even better news that he's going to be on house arrest as early as February, and at least be able to, live a fairly normal life and be in his house with his family. I guess they just put an ankle bracelet on him or whatever. But now there's a really great chance that he's not going to get out in February if this thing in January doesn't go the right way, this ridiculous new charge that he's being charged with. So we really need to be praying for Brother Ken Hovind that he actually gets released to house arrest in February. And for those of you that maybe aren't that familiar with this case, he hasn't done anything, violent or anything that's biblically wrong here. He's in prison just because of IRS, technicalities, paperwork, taxes, just all kinds of dumb things. And so, it's really sad that they would put a guy like Dr. Ken Hovind in prison for over 8 years now, just because of all this financial junk. And, other people are out molesting children and doing all kinds of other horrible, violent things, and they're getting the exact same sentence that Dr. Hovind is getting, or even shorter sentences. So be praying for him, and also, check the comments. I'm sure people will put suggestions of who to contact, congressmen to contact, and where to send your letters and stuff like that. But God bless you, and thanks for tuning in.